Good evening. Welcome to the Monday, September 14th Selectmen's meeting. Do some introductions. We have our town manager, Tom Wooden, and we might want to silence cell phones. Okay. So, well, starting at that end of the table, we have Selectmen. Russ Hoffman here on time. Bill Hamlin, myself, Denise Griffin, Wendy Wolf, Tricia Warren, and our town manager, Tom Wooden. So, let's go to town manager announcements. Tom.
Thank you. Just a couple of things. This afternoon I sent out to you just sort of an FYI about a meeting in Augusta on Wednesday the 30th from 5 to 7 in the afternoon. It's a meeting with Connect Maine Authority, which is an agency charged with improving broadband availability in the state. I know that was something we had talked about in the comprehensive plan, so I thought that might be a good meeting for me to attend. Any of you are certainly welcome to. I think there are a variety of dates there too in other locations, so if you can't make that one, there's other ones. And the other thing I wanted to mention tonight is just that the footbridge enhancement on the east side of the harbor is still planned to begin the first week of October. And that's primarily redoing the entire pavement area from the footbridge all the way out to Atlantic Avenue and replace the fencing on both sides. And it's going to match the other side. And so that's going to look very nice before the winter hits. So those are the only two things I have right off for you.
Okay, great. Thanks, Tom.
Yep.
So financials, Julia.
Hi. We have total revenue year-to-date, $3,747,463.44. Total expenses year-to-date, $1,198,483.37. Does anyone have any questions on the revenue and expenses? My audit was complete 2 weeks ago, so we should be receiving a draft audit report for you guys as soon as possible. Hopefully either to schedule it the next meeting or the prior meeting. So, and everything went well.
Okay.
So I have a question, Julia. Since I'm just coming from an ambulance board meeting,
Yes.
I'm kind of carrying questions back and forth. We agreed to pay the ambulance service in arrears.
Right,
correct?
we had a
At the
special
end
town
of
meeting.
each quarter.
Oh,
But they are sending us a bill at the beginning of each quarter. So we have a bill. This is a question. Do we have a bill for this current quarter?
for September's quarter?
For what would be July through
I do-
September?
I'm not in receipt of that yet, am I?
No, I think that when they were here talking to us, I asked them if they were going to be doing this ahead of time. I think Robbie took that bill back to just re-invoice us.
I was going to say, I had it in my hand, gave it to Tom to ask if we were paying in advance of,
Right.
and from there I haven't seen
And the
it.
agreement
so-
was, no, we didn't have to pay it in advance, we'd pay it the next time they show up and do their presentation on the quarterly review.
It was my belief that I wasn't going to pay until you guys had the quarterly review given by them.
That's
Yeah.
correct.
Okay.
That's correct, but, okay.
The only time we may, I think we'll probably, yes.
Right.
Thank
I was
you.
gonna say
Yeah,
at
Put the words right out of my
At the
mouth.
end of the year, yeah.
Sure.
But,
And I have
okay.
dispersed the money from the special town meeting, so that was after July 1 as well, so they have been in receipt of that.
All right. We, the ambulance board, think that you have a bill. So you think Robbie took it back?
He either took it back or told me that night just to disregard it, but if you could have him reprint it off, I would appreciate that.
All right. What I don't want to happen is confusion. So
Or another special town
I'll
meeting.
ask them to put like second notice on it or something, second submittal or.
Or
Right.
instead of dating it July 1st, date it, you know, near the end of September, that would,
Well, right, because the idea is that it's supposed to, right, and it's supposed to come along with the financials from the previous quarter.
Right, so like, I mean, I.
Not just the bill.
right.
You need some
Right.
information along with it.
I typically, I mean, we have the refuse district that we pay quarterly and stuff, but where you guys requested their review, I wouldn't pay it until after they came here under the, is that not what I was sure?
That's the agreement, yeah.
Right.
Okay. Okay.
I'm not sitting on any bill.
Okay.
Did anyone have any questions on the revenue and expenses? As of today, taxes were due September 10th, and we're 4 days into it, and we've collected 51%, so we're heading tax collection into
Are we gonna get our graph soon?
We are, as soon as they give me the adjustments, which I was hoping they would be at the beginning of this week. I'll give them a call tomorrow and remind him.
Okay.
Total accounts payable, $430,996.99. And the bank balance is $4,214,783.70.
And these are commensurate with a year ago, or you said
They
a
are.
little ahead,
Well,
actually?
there's probably about a 2-week timing difference. And typically, like next selectmen's meeting, we'll have the county bill on it, so.
Yeah, okay. How big is the county bill?
Roughly $1 million.
Just under 900,000.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
close to a
900.
million, right,
Makes a big difference.
yeah.
Takes care of some of the cash.
So this time last year, it was prepared for it. The cash was a little lower.
Yeah. Thank you.
So, where are we with our investment with the First that we
Oh, I'm glad
approved?
you asked.
Yeah.
They were here, was it last week?
Yes.
Last week, and we met with them and filled out whatever paperwork we need to do to open up the accounts and so forth. I believe on tonight's warrant is the check to go to them, for them to invest under the different sub-accounts that we asked them to do.
Great. We did transfer the original 300 that's sitting in reserve accounts now, and then tonight is another, what we budgeted for this year to be put in, so that would be going out tomorrow.
Great, super, thank you.
Okay. Great. So moving on then to the consent agenda, we will look for a motion to approve the minutes of August 10th and 24th.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion?
No.
Great, all in favor? Minutes are approved. And then we're going to look at a liquor license, which I'm assuming is a renewal for China by the Sea, which has been approved by the police chief.
And I'll move acceptance,
Second,
or approval,
anybody?
excuse me.
Second.
Okay, any discussion?
Why does that come to
Because they were late
It's
for
a-
us.
them? They were late.
They were late.
Okay.
Okay, seeing no discussion, we'll take a vote, all in favor? Okay, motion carries. So let's move on. Old business. We had said tonight we were going to talk about making a decision if we felt comfortable doing so with the renovating the tennis court areas. So I'm going to look to Mr. Hamlin because I think he's organized
He is organized.
And
and has
how
put
long
some.
it will be.
Has
I-
put some thinking into this.
I drafted 2 motions, and we could decide which one we would like to pursue. I think it is the sense of the board that we'd like to move forward with some of this tonight. And basically, the first motion suggests that we authorize the town manager to proceed implementing the landscaping plan, the parking lot revisions, the basketball court, the pickleball court, and a picnic area as shown on the plan, dated, et cetera, et cetera. So it's basically everything, with the one caveat that it sets aside an area where on the plan, Danielle had labeled it as flagpole for a future to-be-determined gateway structure area or statue or whatever. So there's certainly room to modify and enhance as we go on. And that's the one I personally would prefer that we do because it kind of gets the ball rolling across the board. The second motion scales that back a little bit and simply authorizes the landscaping and parking lot revisions, leaving open the future authorizations for the basketball court, pickleball court, flagpole area, and picnic area as shown on the plan. And so I think it's a reasonable motion. I think it gets the ball rolling without tying our hands, as issues will come up undoubtedly in the future. But I think they are all tweaks at this point, not major changes.
Thanks for doing this, I appreciate it. Well, I I'll speak for myself, and I think that the Danielle Betts plan makes sense. I just want to make sure that everybody really understands that, at least I'll say, I feel that
Just
the
so
lands,
people know that we're talking about this one.
correct.
Yeah.
That, I think the landscaping portion of
I'll
it
pass
is
this
really important. And while she
Yeah.
came forward with a plan that Wendy's passing around, or showing people, reminding people what it is, I mean, we didn't get to the
This
point
one
where we
up
saw a
here.
detailed
Right.
plan.
Right.
So I'm going to be looking for a few more details.
Right, and that's why
So
it's
that we
phrased.
have proper implementation, not just dotty.
Right, the vote is to authorize the town manager to move ahead implementing this plan. Now, this plan needs a lot more detail, and that'll be part of the implementation. And so, as I said, we're expecting to come back here.
Okay.
The one caveat to that plan is that I've included wording, first of all, that the basketball court be striped for 2 pickleball courts, in addition to the separate single pickleball court.
That's wonderful.
And I've left wording that the pickleball court may be located south of the basketball court or north of the basketball court, whichever makes the most sense as we develop the details.
And you had talked about bringing it to the back of the
Right,
flag.
and that's
as
the
well.
issue of
That's
bringing
another
it to the back.
possibility. Okay, great.
Okay,
So with the
comments
board-
from other people?
What's your druthers?
Well, I have one comment. Since I'm on the Joint Economic Development Committee, and I think it's really good to try and coordinate what's happening with the towns. Booth Bay, of course, is planning a major renovation of the Clifford Park area, and they are talking about having a pickleball court as one of the things in the renovated Clifford Park area. So trying to not over-duplicate activities, I think it's important for us to try and coordinate town facilities when our towns are so close together. And they have quite an ambitious plan, actually, for the renovation of the Clifford Park area. So that may, if those plans go through, and those of you who play pickleball may want to start showing up at the Booth Bay meetings, or at least pay attention to that, there's another opportunity for a facility up in that area, where there's a lot of land, actually, for them to renovate the playground area, so.
Good
Yeah.
point.
Yeah, and there's nothing in this that says at some future date we can't amend it based on what's happening at Booth Bay.
Sure.
I'm good with number 1.
Okay, I'm good with number 1.
Okay, well then,
So
shall
does
we
that mean I
consider?
second number 1?
That's
I
where
I haven't made it yet, but
Yeah.
I'm looking, are you guys okay with number 1?
I can live with number 1, only because I really don't consider that, I hate to bring up the Katrina's term gateway, but I don't really consider that this sufficiently provides a gateway. But I do think we can beautify it with landscaping.
Right.
And it is a recreational area,
And
and
taking
I'm
your-
all about a healthy community, so.
And taking your own argument that it's hard to make a gateway from one side of the street.
Yes,
I
that's
agree.
exactly
I
right.
agree with you. Trish, are you okay with this?
Yeah.
Because I've intentionally tried to leave an area for picnic and perhaps future playground, which I know is of interest to you. All right, I move that we authorize the town manager to proceed to implement the landscaping plan, parking lot revisions, basketball court, pickleball court, and picnic area as shown on the plan from Danielle Betts of the Knickerbocker Group entitled Townsend Avenue Concept Plan Option 2, dated 27 July 2015. Such implementation will include investigating an option for locating the pickleball court to the north of the basketball court. The implementation shall include striping the basketball court with 2 pickleball courts in addition to the basketball lines. The implementation shall set aside a significant area in the region currently labeled flagpole for a future to-be-determined gateway structure, area, or statute. That is my motion.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, more discussion.
A question.
Yes.
Since I have just a small copy. That's okay. I assume the area labeled flagpole is
Here.
this.
In the corner?
piece in the lower left corner.
Yes,
Yeah?
correct.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
right here. Where is that in relation to, may I ask a question?
It's in the, what, the flagpole corner we're talking about?
Yes.
In
In
the
relation,
corner of where the
Called
side street
Emery Lane
is.
and Townsend Avenue.
okay.
About where the Heber construction sign is.
Yes, I noticed that.
Yeah.
This
Which would
side
be
of
nice
the
too.
St. Andrews Village sign.
What's that?
Correct.
Yeah, by the,
This-
right,
It's-
exactly.
Yeah, it would be
Yeah.
further down Townsend from the owner struck that sign.
Oh, all right.
Can I add a
Other
comment?
comments?
May I add a comment? Just in my discussions with Mike Tomko, with Bay Harbor, in my discussions with Lincoln County Regional Planning Commission and Friends of Midcoast Maine, the question was raised, what's the first impression that tourists will have when they enter Booth Bay Harbor? And likely, how will residents feel when they're returning from home? So I hope that as this concept continues to develop, that you guys will use sense of place and quality of life and scenic beauty as your guidelines
Yeah,
for doing this.
The landscaping is clearly what you'll see, and I think we're all in agreement on that. But also the intent of this motion is to set aside an area, and frankly, my idea is to hand the ball over to you guys and to the chamber to think about what iconic or statue or greeting or, I don't know what, or area or memorial area might be placed in that corner to highlight the area.
And possibly, as Bill Royal suggested, maybe it's a design competition.
Yeah,
Maybe there's a something.
At this point, again, I don't think that's for us to do the design or decide. What I'm saying is we set aside an area, and I'd actually like, an ad hoc committee from the town with the chamber and representatives to really take the ball and decide what should go there with support of the community.
Yeah, I would agree. If you have ever seen my artistic capacities, you would want somebody else to do this. So.
Great. Any other comments? No? Okay, all in favor? Wonderful. Okay, motion carries. And I want to thank everybody for their input and coming to
Play
the
ball.
meeting and giving your input.
Whatever ball it is.
I forgot, I also wanted to get into the record to thank Mike and Terry Layton for their contributions to this
Yes,
design, because this has evolved over time quite a bit, and those inputs have been key. I thank you and Terry for those. Thank you.
Don, and his brother Don.
Yes.
Yes,
No,
thank you.
Okay, so, moving forward, new business. We need to, I think just because we need to do it, I don't know whether it's on an annual basis or periodic basis, but the Booth Bay Region Ambulance has asked us to appoint a representative or reappoint a representative again formally to their board. So, Russ, since you're the,
I move that Russ be our representative.
I will second that motion.
great, okay.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Are we good with that, Russ?
I'm good with that.
Good, all in favor? Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Russ, appreciate your time on working with Booth Bay Region Ambulance. Okay, the second item of new business is to renew the Maddox restroom lease. So I think, Tom, you want to tell us about the details? It's my
Yeah,
recollection, there's no major changes.
There's no major changes other than we've changed the dates. The last lease was a three-year lease. It escalates each year based on the consumer price index. That lease ran out June 30th, so we're a little behind the ball on that. So I have redone a new lease with the next 3 years and dollar amounts in there. And both Sewell and Billy Jean have signed their portion of it, so all we need at this point is for the board to sign the lease for the next 3 years.
Okay, fantastic. So I'll look for a motion.
So move that we approve and sign the lease
Okay.
for the 3-year period.
And second?
Second.
All in favor? Great.
Thank you.
All right. And Tom, I think you would like us to readopt all job descriptions because you modified them all slightly at the end to include some description of non-essential functions and a signature
Exactly, yeah, virtually.
line item.
None of them changed in any way whatsoever, other than give just a separate paragraph for non-essential functions. Those things were already listed on these job descriptions. They were listed under essential functions. So nothing has changed there other than where they are placed on the job description. The only thing that's more significant is at the end of the job descriptions, there's now a place for the employee signature and the supervisor signature.
That's great.
So that there's, proof that they have received a copy of this upon employment. So I presented a list to make it easier for everyone the other day of all the different job descriptions rather than print off copies for each one of you. If you could just either approve the whole list or just approve all existing job descriptions, that would work fine.
I think if someone wants to make a motion to approve the new format for all existing job descriptions, that would suffice.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
So, just so I'm clear on what did Lori do?
She took the existing job descriptions and I think added a little bit about non-essential functions, which is not really critical, but but at the end, she added a space.
Signature page.
Signature
Got that.
page. That's the major change.
So there was no
Which-
real change to the
No
content
substan-
of
no.
No.
Okay.
No. Exactly. Any other discussion? All in favor? Okay, great. So I guess after you get all those redone, you'll have them distributed and
Yep.
signed.
No problem.
All right?
Yeah, in the meantime, excuse me, is
Yeah.
Lori working on the rest of the personnel manual?
She is. I believe we're meeting with her this Friday at 8 or 8:30 in the morning.
Okay,
To go over personnel manual
all right.
changes.
So that's moving along, and at some point, we'll see the result of that.
Yep, she's moving along very quickly with us. It's very well done. So I would hope that if we all are in agreement, this Friday, probably at the next selectmen's meeting, she'll be here to make a presentation of what she recommends for changes and so forth.
Excellent. Thank you, Tom.
Sure.
Okay, great. So next item on the agenda is just a discussion of the comprehensive plan. We had said we would talk about Chapter 7, which is the economic development chapter. What did I do here? Copy. Because that might be of some use to the Economic Development Joint Committee. So, comments? Thoughts? I mean, I read through it and I didn't think there really wasn't anything that really stuck out at me as a huge aha.
The action items were all essentially centered around setting up the Economic Development Committee, and since we have done that, and it is proceeding, and I'd like to get a little dump from Wendy before we end tonight's meeting. I think we are well along the way for implementing most of the things that the comprehensive plan said we should be doing.
Yes, well, I thought, first of all, it'd be great to celebrate that we've made progress on one part of the comprehensive plan by getting the Joint Economic Development Committee actually up and meeting. I do think that some of the priorities about student mentoring and apprenticeships, monitoring local fishing and boat building industries, have come up in the Economic Development Committee conversation. However, one thing that was, for us specifically, was the Marine Enterprise Zone, which was something that was charged to the Planning Board. I don't know what that really entails, so I thought it might be worth at least finding out a little bit more, or having some discussion if knowledgeable people are here. And then the other thing that I think is very relevant to us is strengthen the tourism sector, talking about sidewalks, waterfront. We had a conversation at the last meeting about improving the waterfront section down near the footbridge. I believe where people are going out on the rocks and trying to get near the water.
Right, for the rock skipping contest.
Hi, yes, Mike actually has a diagram that might help with that. But I do think those are some of the things that we, as the Booth Bay Harbor Select Board, can have some focus on, as opposed to the Economic Development Committee, because I suspect the Economic Development Committee is going to be looking more at business and economic development as opposed to, say, walkability, sidewalks. I think that's part of a grand master plan to make the towns more appealing, but I suggest that would probably be a lower priority conversation. So I do think there are some things for us to think about, particularly as we head into budget season and thinking about things that have been happening. I know one of my neighbors living near the Southport Bridge has been trying to work with DOT about sidewalks on that stretch of road between Four Corners and Southport Bridge, which is incredibly hazardous. So I think we have some responsibilities to start having some action items, I guess, on some of these things, and instead of just hoping walkability is going to happen. So those were my comments as a Booth Bay Harbor Select person and not reflecting the Joint Economic Development Committee, which I'm happy to talk about as the next agenda item. So, but those were my thoughts looking at this.
Let me just mention one thing as I reviewed this prior to the meeting. The one thing that actually jumped out at me that surprised me a little bit is if you look at table 7.1 of the employment by occupation and industry for Booth Bay Harbor. For Booth Bay Harbor, by industry segment, by far the largest was educational service, healthcare, and social assistance. It was not retail sales or accommodation and food services. Each of those were about 10%. So, even if you aggregate those, they were not as big as the healthcare one. Now, this was a 2010 estimate, so we can anticipate that it's smaller now than it was estimated to be in 2010. Nonetheless, it's a significant segment for the town, and something I'm not sure we've really focused on in any of the discussions. We've focused on the fishing, we've focused on the tourism trade, we've focused on the seasonal nature of the work, but we haven't focused on the healthcare.
Yeah, and actually, I think, Bill, that's a really important conversation that may involve the Joint Economic Development Committee, but if you think about the impact of Lincoln County healthcare in our region from a jobs and economic development standpoint, it would be worthwhile to have some conversations with them of what are the longer term plans. I know they're planning, because of the Register has had stories, the $16 million outpatient facility that consolidates all of their disparate practices up at the Miles campus. But and I know we have the Cologne Wellness Center that just opened, but it's been a long time since we've had a comprehensive conversation about what is your role here in the community and what are the plans?
They are a significant employer.
Yeah, so.
Well, we could think about inviting people from organizations like Lincoln County Healthcare or the Water District and Sewer District, thinking back to the conversation about sidewalks, to a meeting or to a workshop or something and having conversations with them, with those leaders. So if that's something of interest to people, we can pursue that, those ideas.
Yeah, I'd love to hear from others.
And looking at this, I thought there was a lot of good data here, and I thought how was this data generated? well, I thought I remembered reading that it was some sort of estimate or
Some of it's said,
came,
Yeah.
which is
is it from a,
It's from a variety of sources.
that's the comprehensive economic development data that's required by the EDA, the federal arm, the economic, the feds. They're required to have SEDS data every 2 years, and the RPC did it one time, and then it was turfed over to McKed, and then McKed hired the RPC to do it again. And so that's where some of the economic data came from.
so is it, well, not so much the economic data, but the 7 TAC 1 table with types of employments, is that
I believe that's
census data? Is that us
Just to
responding
point out,
to?
at the bottom of each one of these is a source.
Yeah, it says American Community Survey estimates.
Yeah, that's the national survey,
Estimates.
American Community
Yeah, no,
Survey.
they are
It's a more
estimates, and they have a margin of error.
detailed survey
Yeah,
than the
yeah.
census. Yeah.
Okay, and then, so then the other, yeah, as I said, a lot of good data in here that was interesting to look at again. Is there a graph on page 93? I haven't, I'm guilty of having a draft copy and not.
You
the
have an old
final.
copy because the approved one starts on page 99.
Yeah.
So,
Is there a, like right after, you've got a final copy there.
Population changes.
After
on page 93.
7-5, there,
That one.
my graph is blank. Okay, and then so strategy number 4 talks about, and I assume it talks about the same thing in, development of land suitable for business within the region. Was there a thought about where such land might exist in Booth Bay Harbor?
No, it's the second sentence, which says, the town or partners could establish a business park or work with the town of Booth Bay.
Yeah, okay.
And that's the regional aspect.
Right.
That we really don't have very much open or undeveloped land that's suitable for business.
Well, and we don't want to really reduplicate efforts either.
Right, and that's why we have this joint committee.
Exactly.
So the plan is with the land, though, it's land that we already currently possess that we're trying to develop as opposed to purchasing land? Or no?
I think it's either.
If it was
It's
joint
just that
with
there's
Booth
not
Bay,
a lot of
it
land.
would probably be their
Because,
industrial
I mean,
park.
currently, we don't really have much space anyway to begin with.
That's right.
So we would
Right.
have to,
Things come up at various times.
Purchase.
Tom, you've looked at repurposing Bigelow's
Mhm.
facilities and the marine resources facilities, since they're probably underutilized at this point in time. But that in itself is a fairly limited
yeah.
yeah, pretty small acreage.
site, yeah.
The other point that I thought was interesting was strategy number 5, and working on linkage between schools and businesses. And then under the strategy, it talks about student mentoring, apprenticeships, and those are all good ideas. Again, it kind of puts the action item on the Economic Development Committee at the beginning, but I would certainly be interested in helping make that happen. So if, Wendy, you get to a point where you're talking about that kind of thing.
Yeah,
I've done some of that in the past.
Great.
Wendy, do you remember at the Economic Development Committee meeting, one of the things that was mentioned is that we wanted representation from the schools.
All right.
We had business, we had municipal, but we felt very important that we needed a strong tie to the schools, and that raised up as a priority. So by getting that, I think that takes your point number 5.
Yep.
And maybe we can work on that.
Yeah, the schools weren't specified, in the original memorandum of agreement in terms of the membership. So I don't think the committee yet has committed itself as to, say, additional members that might be valuable to have. We talked about the school having a representative because we feel the continuity between what students experience and
Sure.
thinking about economic development is really important. But that hasn't been a definitive action item yet, so.
Yep.
Other thoughts? I mean, my only other thought on, with regards to the suggestions is that we just keep in mind the last, well, no, the 10th and 11th suggestions, high-speed fiber, Wi-Fi networks, anticipating the next generation of technologies. We just really want to kind of stay focused on that.
Yeah, I think that's
think.
important. You're going to
So,
carry that
yeah.
message to Augusta next week.
That's what I'm going to on the 30th, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Tell
which
them
is
we'd
perfect.
like it, please.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Sooner rather than later. So,
Denise,
But-
I'll just mention that I've had conversations recently with Bob Fawns, and he's actually pulling together data and information about the Marine Enterprise Zone.
Oh,
And,
good, thank you.
He'll have information, I think, that I
Okay.
can share with the planning board members, and we can start to throw out some general ideas and information and see what's done in similar areas. And then I'll give you something to be able to look at.
okay. Great. Super, thanks.
Thanks, Mike.
Okay. Any other comments on Chapter 7?
Oh, Wendy, do you also want to mention that the Economic Development Committee felt, at least of those members that were present, that this is so important that rather than meeting on a monthly basis, they wanted to meet twice a month. So we're trying that tact in order
Yeah.
to keep
Right.
things moving forward.
Great, great, great.
Well,
Super.
actually, I'm happy to give a more
Yeah,
robust
Yes, please.
report.
Absolutely.
And Mike is here
Let's
too, so
segue
he
into
can-
that.
Yeah, so we've had 2 meetings, and the last one was on September 8th. The first meeting was really more hello and get to know each other and just some basic structure. But this meeting, we actually had Mary Ellen and Bob come for the benefit of members who haven't heard sort of what Lincoln County planners can provide to the Economic Development Committee. They did a presentation of both how they're funded, how they are committed to serving the towns in Lincoln County, that they can help with grant funding and grant writing, do some facilitation, and also help us think about leveraged opportunities that come from the state, the feds, and also connect with some workforce training. One of the things the committee is very committed to is, I'll say in shorthand, being an action committee and not a talking committee. And this is one reason why we thought we would meet a little bit more frequently to sort of get the beginning discussions off the ground and get some progress being made. And so we will be meeting just about every 2 weeks for the next month and a half. One of the things that the committee's very interested in is trying to identify where are sort of the local hot spots, in the sense of where is activity or development already either underway or being planned in the near future, so that we can identify where those opportunities are, and we can make sure that they're coordinated and operating synergistically, rather than, oh, well, geez, I sure wish that so-and-so had told us that they were doing, this pipe laying here, and then we could have put a fiber optic cable down or whatever. Geez, why didn't we know that? So one of our priorities for the next meeting is actually have a regional map where members are supposed to bring information about what they know is going on within the region, so that we can sort of have a mapped out information diagram about where planned development or business expansion or other activities that are key might be going on. One example is the gardens master plan has received a lot of publicity with the anticipation that the garden would like to grow its visitorship from 100,000 a year to 300,000 a year. Well, if anybody's been driving around in the summer trying to get off at the Booth Bay Common to get onto 27, you know that with the increased visitorship to the garden, that traffic has become a huge problem. So if the visitorship is going to be increasing significantly, what does that mean in terms of, as they implement the master plan, there'll have to be some revision of roads. How is MDOT brought into that? How do we then coordinate what we want to have happen at the gateway to the region so that it's happening with our planning as opposed to being planned for us distant to the region and then delivered to us. So there is a sense that there's some urgency to make sure that we are identifying some of these things now so that we can begin to find out about them, insert ourselves into the planning and the conversation. People felt that was quite a high priority. And MDOT certainly was one thing that came up over and over again just because of access and trying to make it easy to get into the region so that people might want to return a second time. We also talked about some of the challenges of being a publicly appointed committee. Tom, I'll want to talk to our attorney about what are the rules in terms of, public openness, et cetera, because if you really get down into the nit and grit of economic development and planning, then there may be certain instances of confidentiality where people are making tentative business plans where they may not feel they're ready to come and talk about it in a public forum or be on the cable television network. And so there may be a point where we think about an alternative structure that could be able to be nimble enough to work on behalf of the towns, but retain some degree of confidentiality so that people are comfortable sharing some of their plans without being overtly public until the timing is right for their businesses. I think Mike mentioned the desire to have the schools involved in this planning, and I think that was about the gist of our last meeting discussion, but I'd certainly ask Mike to add things since you were there.
Thank you, Wendy. The only other thing I'd like to add is that Bob Ponce had mentioned the availability of certain grants and funds, upwards of almost 50%, for doing some planning and actually some implementation of large projects, roads, sidewalks, things like that. So I find that Bob and Mary Ellen would both be a great resource to our Economic Development Committee.
Yeah, I would agree. And the reason I wanted us to talk about the chapter on economic development is I think the committee feels very strongly that we're going to have to set our priorities in the sense that there are many things happening. People have expectations for what they'd like the committee to accomplish, broadband and this, and change roads. And so we're going to have to prioritize our efforts. And that's why I suggested things like looking at walkability within Booth Bay Harbor. That probably is going to be, number 10 or 11 or whatever, so that I don't think we as the representatives of the harbor should defer that to the Economic Development Committee. There should be things that we should push along ourselves while the joint committee is trying to figure out where it's going to place its energy for the best yield. So.
Good point.
Yeah.
Well, and I would also, I would hope that the committee would just remember that each town has put aside some money, so at the point where we think we need to, hire some outside consulting help, let's not wait too long to do that, because their funding is there for this year. Or whatever else you deem is appropriate.
Sure.
Doesn't have to be outside consulting help, but that's the first thing that comes to mind. And if Bob and Mary Ellen are helpful, I think we just have to kind of be cognizant about how many free hours they are able to give you, and if we need more, we need to figure out how to take advantage of that.
When is your next meeting?
So,
I wanted to say that for the cable news folks and everybody here in the room, September 22nd. I'm not sure if we're meeting in the harbor or the Booth Bay town office. I think the Booth Bay has a planning meeting, so we may have to meet here. October 6th and October 20th. And those meetings start at 5:30 and they end promptly at 7, so that people are succinct in their comments. So,
I would point out, Wendy, that economic development is one of the 6 statutory citations that you're allowed to have an executive session for.
Good.
So there is already a mechanism by which you could move into executive session if somebody wanted to come and impart information to you about economic development that might be harmful if it had a wider distribution.
great, thank you very much. I think we had some public.
good.
And
Okay,
Helen.
comments?
Yes, just Helen Farnham with Bay Harbor. With all the development going on and committees and everything, I know there's a lot of expertise that goes in. Is anybody asking some of the older groups what they might like to see or go around the community itself at all? And I know a lot of people don't like to come to meetings, and things like this, but even if you had something on Facebook, what would you like to see, in your town or make better? Just to give everybody input. Because myself, right now, a lot of this is beyond me, and I'll be honest about it. And, but there's a lot of people out there, like we have up to Bay Landing, we're a woman that goes and goes to the school every day, about every couple of days. Somebody else teaches at the school. There's various people around in the area. They very well may like to have more or less a piece of the action in a way. And I was just wondering if that has actually been put out. I mean, yes, the select people put it out on their agenda, this may be, or whatever, we have a regular meeting at. But a lot of times, it's the expertise people that go to some of these meetings. And they've got it all, where somebody else may not. And they may be very valuable in helping some people decide if this is something they would really like to see, and whatever, and they very well may.
So maybe Wendy or Mike can bring it back to the committee to try to figure out how to open up.
Yeah, if I can just answer that, because,
okay.
let me
Right.
read you right from the agenda, that we had a very ambitious agenda, and we didn't get specifically to this item, but it says, publicizing committee activities and engaging the community. Town websites, Facebook pages, Channel 7, public hearing. We want the community to know what's going on, contribute, and be engaged, because the only way this is going to work.
Stressed a little bit, like in the register, and, but stress more, so that they might want to be engaged in something like this.
Sure, and the committee has only had 2 meetings, so we're kind of toddlers right now, so if you give us a little time to get out of diapers and get in grade school, it might be more time to really begin to take in input, because we're still trying to figure out who is who and who brings what expertise to the table. But I think our intention is very much that this has to be a community process that gets the best ideas out of the community and has to be supported by the community.
Right.
So I think you're right on the money.
Thank you.
That's also one reason why we wanted to try out Booth Bay as a town hall for meeting, because of their ability to record live and the meetings.
Yeah.
You can actually stream there, can't you?
Yes.
Good. Okay.
Thank you.
Yes.
Any
thank you.
other comments about the Economic Development Committee? Thank you for the report. Sure. Appreciate it. Sounds like the committee has a really good plan. Okay, we'll move on to public forum. Are there any public forum comments tonight? Yes.
Margaret Parrott, Booth Bay Harbor. I haven't been here in a while. And I brought you each a little something from our new community center. And I came to talk a little bit about what we're doing. Denise and her husband came to our grand opening.
I was there.
Which was great. I think, thank you. Chip's picture ended up on our Facebook page. This is our new logo and the calendar for September and the incomplete calendar for October, so you can get an idea of what we're doing. The Booth Bay Region Health and Wellness Foundation has been fostering some initiatives around town. They have a group called Empowered Patients that meet with Steve Cook to learn how to keep your medical records handy so that when you go to the emergency room or to the hospital, you know what medications you're on, and you have some documentation with you and that sort of thing. We also have the awesome seniors who are walking millions of miles at the Y and whose members are amazing, really, in their 90s and doing all kinds of wonderful things. And that group is called People Helping People. And at a recent, fairly recent board meeting, there were some of us who said, we really need a senior center in the area. We need a place where people who need an excuse to get out have an excuse, or have a reason, not an excuse. And they said, that's a good idea, do it. So there's a committee of us, there are 5 of us. Sean Lewin and Jane Good from Southport. I'm from Booth Bay Harbor. Donna Moore is from Booth Bay Harbor. And Ted Schmidt is from Booth Bay. So we're, the area is represented. And we took a trip up to Bangor and went to the Hammond Street Senior Center and looked at that amazing situation up there. And they have a paid director. They have a pretty good budget. They get money from the towns. And she said, start small and have plenty of parking. So we came back home and we looked at the Meadow Mall and we found some space in there. And we have rented that space for a year. And with gifts of furniture, and I mean, it's amazing. We had empty space with walls that needed repair and all kinds of, and in less than 2 weeks, we furnished it completely. You've seen it. It's amazing. The stuff has come from everywhere. We did, and I think we spent less than $500. We went to the Rotary auction and got some things, and we have teapots and coffee pots and teacups and coffee cups and baked goods and classes going like mad. And we're seeing between 20 and 35 people, different people, every day in there. We're open from 10 in the morning until 4 in the afternoon, Monday through Friday. And I was down there this morning. I'm not supposed to be on duty except on Thursdays and Fridays, but I was in this morning, and Jane Good had just come back from going to Portland to pick up a Canon copier that a construction company wanted to give to a 501c3. Jane just said, I'm going for it. And so we've got a copy machine, and there were cribbage classes going, a knitting class going in this room, crocheting going in that room. The men are doing the cribbage over here, and then there are a couple of men in the back room fixing the walls and plastering. It's all volunteer. It's free to everybody, and it's working. So I would invite you to come, meet your neighbors, watch really special things happen, like the woman the other day who was volunteering, and two women walked in the door that went to school with her, and she hadn't seen them for 40 years. And they had a reunion right there. It was just absolutely amazing. So it's really good, and we're pleased to
to say that we are simply a social gathering place for seniors and their friends. That's it. That's what we're doing. And when our Wi-Fi is turned on the 22nd, all the youngsters are coming in too. So we're catching people across the generations.
Great.
And we'd love for you to come and see us.
Excellent. Nice.
Great, thank you so much
I'm
for
sorry I
your
didn't
great
get here
work.
before we opened. The other members went to all their boards of selectmen before we opened, but I apologize for not getting here sooner.
That's all right. There were plenty of people there at the opening. You could
Wasn't that amazing?
hardly squeeze yourself in, so it was very successful. Really was. Okay, any other public forum comments? Great, seeing none, we'll move on to warrants. I'll look for a motion to approve the warrants
So
upon
moved.
review.
So moved.
Second? Okay, all in favor? Motion carries. I don't think we have a need for an executive session tonight, do we?
Uh,
I don't think so.
No, I don't think we're ready for one.
All right,
Okay.
sounds fine to me.
So then I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Great, all in favor? We're adjourned.